Jesus Christ, a true Son of the East, brought to the world a profoundly practical and spiritual message that challenges the intellectual and material conventions often found in the West. While the West has excelled in areas such as politics, economics, and military strategies, the East has its strength in spiritual fields and the pursuit of inner truth. Jesus exemplified this practical approach to religion, offering a clear and direct path for those seeking truth and a connection with the divine. Beloved ones, may we open ourselves today to a deep reflection on how the teachings of Jesus can illuminate our emotional wounds and guide us on a path of true healing. Emotional healing is often a process that requires courage to look within and recognize the pains we carry, many of which are hidden behind the masks we wear daily. Just as the ego traps us in cycles of suffering and attachments, Jesus invites us to detach and purify our hearts. He reminds us that the kingdom of God is within you, and to access it, we must pass through the shadows that conceal our essence. When we speak of renunciation, it is not just about giving up material goods or earthly pleasures, but also about letting go of emotional attachments, sorrows, resentments, traumas, and stories we carry like invisible chains. Often, these wounds are fed by the ego, which insists on reliving pain, blaming others, or holding on to grudges. But, as Jesus taught, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." This purity is achieved when we allow ourselves to heal, abandon the weight of pain, and trust in a greater love that transforms us. Emotional healing, like spiritual awakening, is an act of surrender. It is allowing divine love to touch our wounds, dissolving the barriers we have built. Not looking inward hurts far more than facing what wounds us, because ignored suffering grows like a shadow that drains our energy. But when we choose to look at our wounds with honesty and compassion, we begin to free our hearts, making them fertile ground for peace and connection with the divine. With this reflection, we embark on a journey of discovery about how emotional healing is intrinsically linked to spiritual awakening. May we recognize the courage that dwells within us to face the shadows, purify our hearts, and take the first steps toward inner freedom. Continuing on this journey of emotional healing and spiritual awakening, it is essential to understand that many of our emotional pains have deep roots in the ego. The ego, in its essence, is not something negative. It is part of us and has its function. However, when it becomes our master instead of our servant, it traps us in cycles of fear, pride, and attachment. Jesus, with his divine wisdom, showed us how to transcend the ego, not by denying its existence, but by subjugating it to greater love and total surrender to God. Throughout life, we accumulate sorrows, resentments, and traumas, like layers of dust over our spiritual essence. The ego makes us believe that these wounds define who we are, and, in its attempt to protect us, creates barriers against healing. It whispers to us that forgiveness is a sign of weakness, that letting go of control is dangerous, and that releasing suffering is like losing a part of our identity. However, Jesus invites us to take the opposite step, to let go of these pains and trust in something greater. He showed us that true strength lies in opening the heart, even in the face of adversity, and allowing divine love to cleanse what weighs us down. Emotional healing, in this sense, is not just an individual act, but a profound spiritual movement. It is an act of faith. It is trusting that, by placing our pains in God's hands, they will be transformed into learning, growth, and wisdom. This surrender requires humility, because we face our shadows with the understanding that we are imperfect beings, yet deeply loved. And by renouncing old wounds and resentments, we make space for divine light to illuminate our hearts. This is a daily practice. It is not something that happens in an instant, but a continuous process of choice. Every day, when faced with challenges, we must ask ourselves, is this reaction coming from love or from the ego? Am I clinging to this pain, or am I allowing it to teach and free me? These questions are the key to unlocking our emotional healing and aligning ourselves with Jesus' message, which calls us to purity of heart and a return to our spiritual essence. We now arrive at the deepest dimension of emotional healing, the reunion with our divine essence and the transcendence of the ego. When Jesus teaches that the kingdom of heaven is within us, he invites us to look inward, to face everything we have hidden and denied, and to recognize that behind the pains, sorrows, and illusions, there is a divine light waiting to be discovered. Emotional healing is an act of spiritual courage. It requires us to set aside the masks the ego forces us to wear and to face our vulnerabilities with honesty and compassion. Often, we avoid this process because we fear what we will find. However, like a dark room that lights up when we turn on a light, the shadows of our being disappear when we allow love and truth to take space. It is not the pain of looking within that destroys us, but the pain of continuing to live disconnected from who we truly are. Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, showed us that healing does not occur only through forgiving others, but also through forgiving ourselves. He teaches us that we are not defined by past mistakes, but by our ability to free ourselves from them. It is an invitation to self-compassion, to accepting who we have been, and to opening ourselves to who we can become. This attitude of inner mercy places us in a state of spiritual openness, where we can truly connect with God and the flow of divine love. As we advance in this process, we realize that the ego, with its traps of pride and control, begins to lose its grip on our lives. In its place, a new perception emerges, that we are more than our pains, more than our fears, more than our fleeting desires. We are, in truth, expressions of divine love, created in the image and likeness of the Father. And as we recognize this truth, we begin to radiate the peace and wholeness we seek. Finally, emotional healing is not just for ourselves. It has the power to transform our relationships, our choices, and our impact on the world. When we heal our inner wounds, we stop projecting our pain onto others and start acting with more empathy and compassion. We become instruments of divine love, capable of inspiring and helping those around us to embark on their healing journeys as well. The final part of this reflection on emotional healing invites us to integrate what we have learned so far and to live in communion with our spiritual essence. After facing the shadows of the ego, forgiving ourselves, and opening our hearts to divine love, one fundamental task remains: the daily practice of manifesting this healing in our choices, thoughts, and actions. This is where true transformation occurs, because it is not enough to recognize the light within us. We must allow it to illuminate the world around us. Walking with awakened consciousness is a constant practice. Jesus showed us, through his life, that living aligned with the divine will requires surrender and discipline. He did not promise an easy path, but he guaranteed it would be rewarding. Living in tune with our essence requires mindfulness, because the ego, even after being confronted, will try to return in the form of doubts, fears, and old patterns. But every moment we choose love over fear, compassion over judgment, and faith over doubt, we reaffirm our commitment to emotional and spiritual healing. Also, it is important to remember that our healing is not an isolated event. As we transform, we inevitably impact others. When we radiate the peace we have achieved, we become agents of change for those around us. We conclude this journey with gratitude, knowing that healing is both a gift and a responsibility. May we carry this awareness into our daily lives, spreading light, love, and peace. I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave your comment below, sharing your reflections and how you believe we can strengthen our spiritual connection in daily life. Let's build a more conscious and harmonious community together. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content.